The panic of being behind is a lie. It's just your ego looking left and right. The truth? You are a time billionaire. So let the wait go and follow to start living your story. This is a complete roadmap to becoming a time billionaire. I'm not hiding the secret behind a paywall. I'm giving it to you for free, right here. If you're tired of the hustle and want a sober, peer-reviewed look at your future, join us, subscribe, and let's get to work. It's 3 in the morning, and you're staring at the ceiling. You aren't thinking about a specific bill or a deadline at work. Instead, it's a much heavier, more quiet weight sitting on your chest. It's the feeling that you're losing, not to a competitor or a colleague, but to the clock itself. You look at your age, then you look at your bank account, and then you look at the life you thought you'd have by now. The gap between those 3 things feels like a canyon. You feel like you're running out of time to get it right. You feel like if you don't make a massive move in the next 6 months, the door to the life you want will stay shut forever. But I want you to take a breath for a second. That feeling isn't actually a reflection of your failure. It's a symptom of a very specific kind of modern psychological trap. We live in an era where we are constantly shown the finished products of other people's lives, but never the messy, decade-long manufacturing process. We see the 30-year-old with the paid-off house and the passive income, and we subconsciously decide that is the baseline. Anything less is a crisis. But what if I told you that this urgency, this panicked rush to arrive at financial freedom is the very thing that is making you poorer? What if the feeling of running out of time is actually a distraction from the only thing that could actually give you your time back? We've been conditioned to view life as a series of sprints. We're told to get the degree by 22, the career by 25, the house by 30, and the legacy shortly after. We've turned financial milestones into biological deadlines. When we miss one, even by a little bit, we start to panic. This panic triggers a physiological response. When you feel like you're running out of time, your brain shifts from long-term strategic thinking to short-term survival mode. You stop looking at the horizon and start looking at your feet. This is why people who feel behind are the most likely to fall for get-rich-quick schemes, high-risk trading, or burnout-inducing side hustles that they hate. They aren't trying to build wealth anymore. They're trying to buy back the time they think they've lost. But here is the foundational misunderstanding we all carry. We think wealth is a destination we reach so we can finally stop rushing. In reality, wealth is just the ability to stop rushing in the first place. If you are stressed, panicked, and feeling behind while making 6 figures, you aren't actually wealthy. You're just a high-earning runner on a faster treadmill. The real goal isn't to get to the end of the race faster. The goal is to realize that the race itself is mostly imaginary. I remember talking to someone who felt this deeply. He was 34, making decent money, but he felt like a failure because he hadn't scaled anything. He felt like he had wasted his 20s. He told me he felt like he was running out of time to be successful. I asked him what success looked like, and he described a life where he didn't have to check his calendar every morning. He wanted peace, he wanted autonomy, but the irony was that in his rush to get that peace, he was destroying his current peace. He was working 80 hours a week to eventually buy the right to work 0 hours. He was sacrificing his only guaranteed time, the present, for a theoretical future that he was too tired to even enjoy if he got there. This is what I call the time poverty loop. We feel poor in time, so we work harder to make more money, which takes away more of our time, which makes us feel even more behind. It's a cycle that feeds on your anxiety. To break it, we have to look at the psychology of why we feel this way. Part of it is what researchers call social scaffolding. For most of human history, your life path was dictated by your village. You knew exactly what you'd be doing at 40 because it's what your father did at 40. There was no running out of time because there was no expectation to be anything other than what you were. Today, that scaffolding is gone. We are told we can be anything, which sounds like a gift, but it's actually a burden. If you can be anything and you are currently nothing or just average, then the blame falls entirely on you. Every minute you spend resting feels like a minute you're failing to achieve your potential. We've internalized the idea that our time is a raw material that must be converted into capital at all times. If we aren't optimizing, we're losing. This is exacerbated by the fact that we are the first generation to witness the top 0.1% of the world in real time every day through our phones. You aren't comparing yourself to your neighbor anymore. You're comparing your Tuesday morning to a billionaire's highlight reel. When you see a 24-year-old with a private jet, your brain doesn't see a statistical anomaly. It sees a new deadline. It thinks, I'm 30 and I'm still worried about the cost of groceries. I am 6 years past due. But wealth doesn't work on a linear timeline. The most powerful force in finance and in life is compounding. And the thing about compounding is that it is notoriously back-heavy. If you look at a graph of compound interest, it looks like nothing is happening for the first 80% of the time. It's flat, it's boring, it looks like a waste of effort. Then suddenly it verticalizes. The problem is that most of us quit or change strategies during that long flat period because we feel like we're running out of time. We think, it's been 3 years and I only have $10,000. At this rate, I'll never be free. So we stop. We try something faster. We reset the clock back to zero. We do this over and over again, never realizing that the boring part was actually the most important phase. It was the foundation. You aren't running out of time. You're likely just in the flat part of your own curve. Think about the concept of a time billionaire. 1,000,000 seconds is about 12 days. 1,000,000,000 seconds is 31 years. If you are in your 20s or 30s, you are a time billionaire. Even if your bank account is low, you possess the one asset that the wealthiest people on their deathbeds would trade everything for. They would give every skyscraper and every stock option to be 34 and behind again. When you feel like you're running out of time, you're essentially a billionaire crying because you don't have enough pennies. You are wealthy in the only currency that actually matters, but you're so focused on the secondary currency, money, that you're willing to throw away your billions to get it. So, how do we shift this? How do we stop the midnight ceiling staring? It starts with a fundamental redefinition of what getting it right means. We have to move away from milestone-based thinking and toward system-based living. A milestone is a destination, a net worth goal, a job title, a house. The problem with milestones is that they are always in the future. You are failing every day until the day you reach it. And once you reach it, the dopamine lasts for about 48 hours before your brain creates a new, even further milestone. System-based living is different. It's about deciding what kind of Tuesday you want to have. If your goal is to be financially free, don't ask yourself how you can get $1 million by 40. Ask yourself what a financially free person does on a random Tuesday. Usually the answer is they work on things they find meaningful, they spend time with people they love, and they don't live in a state of constant panic. You can actually start doing parts of that today. Financial freedom isn't a binary switch that flips from off to on. It's a gradual softening of your constraints. When you have 1 month of expenses in the bank, you have a tiny bit of freedom. You can say no to a tiny bit of disrespect. When you have 6 months, you have more. When you have a modest portfolio, even if it's not enough to retire on, you have options. Each step isn't a race toward a finish line. It's the slow removal of the weight from your chest. You also have to realize that some of the best things in life are actually time-locked. You cannot experience the joy of a 20-year friendship in 2 years. You cannot experience the wisdom of a long career in 6 months. There is a specific kind of richness that only comes from the passage of time. When you try to rush your financial life, you often end up bypassing the very experiences that make the money worth having in the end. A person who gets rich at 25 often misses the character-building struggle of their 30s. The phase where you learn who you are when things are difficult. The anxiety of being behind is often just the ego talking. It's the part of you that wants to be admired rather than the part of you that wants to be happy. If you were on a deserted island with plenty of resources, you would never feel behind. You'd just live. The feeling of running out of time is a social construct. It's the result of looking left and right instead of looking inward. I want you to consider the possibility that you are exactly where you need to be, that the mistakes you made in your 20s were actually tuition. You didn't lose those years. You spent them learning what doesn't work. That's valuable data. You aren't starting from scratch. You're starting from experience. The most practical thing you can do right now, if you feel this urgency, is to actually slow down. I know that sounds counterintuitive. When you're in a panic, you want to move faster. But in finance, speed is usually synonymous with risk. If you want to build a life that lasts, you have to be willing to build it slowly. You have to be okay with the flat part of the curve. You have to be okay with being average for a while you build your foundation. Stop asking yourself, how much longer will this take? And start asking, is the direction I'm moving in correct? If the direction is right, the timing is secondary. Whether you reach your goal at 45 or 55 matters much less than the fact that you lived a life of intentionality and calm along the way. The next time that 3 a.m. panic hits, try to remind yourself of what you actually have. Remind yourself that you are a time billionaire. Remind yourself that the clock isn't your enemy, it's your partner. Compounding only works if you give it time to breathe. If you keep poking at your life, trying to make it grow faster, you're just disturbing the soil. Plant the seeds, water them, and then go for a walk. Life is not a race to the exit. Success isn't about how quickly you can stop being you and start being the person in the thumbnail. It's about the quiet realization that you have enough time to do what matters, as long as you don't waste your time worrying about how much of it is left. Progress isn't always a loud, visible explosion of success. Most of the time, progress is just a quiet Tuesday, where you feel a little less anxious than you did last year. It's a small deposit into an account that you've promised not to touch. It's a moment of gratitude for the coffee in your hand, even if the house it's being served in isn't your dream home yet. You have time. You have more than you think. The only way you actually run out is by spending your present moments in a state of mourning for your future. So, let that weight go. Stop racing a clock that doesn't exist. You aren't behind, you're just in the middle of your story. And the best parts of the story usually don't happen in the first few chapters anyway. They happen later, after the character has learned that the rush was never the point. Be patient with yourself. Wealth is a slow build, and a good life is an even slower one. But I promise you, when you finally get to where you're going, you won't wish you'd gotten there 5 years sooner if it meant you had to be miserable the whole time. You'd just be glad you didn't quit when the curve was flat. Take a breath. You're doing better than you think, and you have all the time you need to get where you're actually supposed to go.